Lee Borkenhagen from Oxfam. I wanted to engage the question and perhaps the room on the changes that we're seeing in analysis of in response to climate change. And the two were being separated, and I myself find that I'm kind of constantly trying to bring the two together in Oxfam and struggling at that. But interestingly, we have had a very well-received effort at looking at the impact of climate change on individuals, trying to understand the gendered impacts differently. So looking at men and women and using the livelihoods 5 capitals as the analytical lens by which to understand the impact of climate change differently upon men and women. And that has actually been a really interesting way to see it, be taken on, and perhaps in a kind of more, it has a slightly more kind of grounding effect. And I wonder if actually what we might be seeing is a disparity in the way in which it is taken on in some places on the climate change issue in a really kind of embracing way, and in others actually kind of separated. I just would be quite interested if there was more discussion around that particular issue.
Anybody else, particularly on that issue around climate change and sustainable livelihoods? People have any experience or any thoughts about that? Maggie?
I'm doing a review for Christian Aid at the moment, looking at climate change in fragile states, and I've noticed that there's very little literature out there that combines the adaptation literature with the governance dimensions, and how do you bring the policies and processes into the conversation of adaptation and instilling adaptation, or who will encourage positive adaptation. So I found that was quite an interesting comment that Ian's made, and hopefully there'll be more documented examples of how we can bring some of the approaches that are divergent back together.
Did you want to come back on any of that, particularly around climate change?
One of the big issues is around timescales. Very often our livelihoods work tends to be on immediate responses and adaptation responses as of now. And a lot of the very rich and important livelihoods work has celebrated the ability of people to make use of their asset pentagon or whatever to respond to uncertainty and variability in natural and other forms of impact. But actually a lot of climate change is about much longer term impacts, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, which may fundamentally change the ability of people to respond. And I think it's that mismatch between short-term adaptation and long-term secular change that may fundamentally affect livelihood opportunity and in an even adaptive capability in climate change language that we've often missed. And I think the ability of livelihoods thinking to think about that long-term capacity is really key. And I don't think we're there yet. I think there are other literatures which can combine with good, solid, grounded, livelihoods-based perspectives that would help. I mean, for instance, at the STEP Centre, which we host here, we had a meeting with the Resilience Alliance based in Stockholm a couple of weeks ago on their resilience thinking. Now, it's interesting how livelihoods thinking and resilience thinking or sustainability science thinking have again separated themselves off into these little categories. Actually, the origins were much closer.